Weight loss. Hot topic. We have a problem in the United States, somewhat Canada, especially Mexico. For the first time in 20 years, we're no longer number one at something. Mexico has officially surpassed us as far as weight goes. Not a proud statistic. And I was really pondering this starting about 2 months ago, because as you know, we're very science-based. And how do I really go after this thing that has become such a problem that it's starting to envelope 65% of our population at this point? We think within 10 years it's going to be 80% of our population. 1 out of 3 kids is now pre-diabetic or diabetic. And these are adult onset diabetes. And we think that our current generation, 55% of them will be diabetic by the time they're 35. These statistics vary bit by bit, but obviously we are being enveloped by a health crisis which is way beyond other crises and could perhaps threaten the very existence of us as a healthy nation economically, let alone health-wise. So I was thinking about this presentation and really the gravity about it. And as I was going through the research that's out there, I became so frustrated, because the problem is multifactorial, as are many health problems. Right? We had new patients this morning. One of my new patients was a Crohn's patient, 21 years old. 101 pounds, just wasting away. And the only answer they had says, well, the GI specialist just gave me Humira, 3 minutes of his time, and recheck in 3 months. And he reacted horribly to it, did not do well, so they put him on prednisone. Now, is Crohn's disease a deficiency of prednisone? Is it a Humira deficiency? No, it goes deeper than that. It is a very complex problem, and it just frustrates me to no end that that doesn't get talked about, thought about, and addressed. The other patient was a severe bipolar who was on 4 different medications, psychotropic meds, with horrible side effects, was off of work at 35 because could not work, and was just being addressed by these horrible drugs that had multiple side effects. And the reason for the bipolar, the reason that his brain being so irritated, is never being addressed. Third new patient this morning was a 5-month-old baby who was bleeding from her skin everywhere. So dry, cracking open, just absolutely miserable. Only answer given, prednisone cream. This is not a prednisone cream deficiency. Right? This is a very complex problem that started in the gut. Baby got very inflamed. Was probably introduced at birth when the wrong bacteria was introduced in the gut, and it just comes out that way. Why not hit that instead? Obesity is the same thing. You have to put it in a functional medicine model to see how we're functioning and address that. And we're going to do that today. And it struck me how in the research, we're really not addressing the differences between male and female. You think that male and female are a little bit different muscle-wise, maybe hormone-wise? Of course we are. We're incredibly different. And therefore, it should be addressed differently. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the different age groups as well. But I want to hit a bunch of basics first, because you always got to start with basics. And we're going to hit exercise. We're going to hit food. Then we're going to go into male versus female. Then we're going to go into specifics of age groups within those categories. And then I hope to sum it up, because by then your eyes will have glazed over and hopefully I can bring some clarity. Yeah? So let's start with exercise. It's been a particularly gratifying years in the annals of research as far as exercise goes. As some of you know that come fairly regularly, I'm a bit of a cycling fanatic. Tour de France is this thing that I really watch. Everything else, nah, but that's the one thing that I'll watch. And Tour de France to me is a game of chess. It is really the ultimate elite athletes pushing to extremes what they can do. So I pay close attention to what they do for hydration, for the nutritional protocols, and yes, their exercise protocols. And I noticed that starting about 25 years ago, the exercise times was diminishing. So instead of these incredibly long 200-mile training rides that these people were doing and creating incredible wear and tear, excessive injuries, mental burnout, they were starting to get smarter by decreasing their training time into more short bursts and increasing their performance because of it. So I thought, well, if that works for the professionals, why not try that on our patients? So we started doing that with our marathon runners and the triathletes, and yes, the cyclists, and yes, even us mere normal mortals. And it found that we got incredible results just with that burst interval type of training where we increased the intensity but decreased the length of the exercise protocol. And we really have when you really go back in history, the Russians back in the Soviet Union days to thank for that. They did the original research on that back in the 50s and 60s. So fast forward, and then about 3-4 years ago, McMaster University out of London area, Kitchener, Waterloo, that Southwest Ontario corridor, which has really become a high-tech corridor for research, started finding that there's some very incredible things that if you mixed burst weight training along with interval training, whatever you're doing, whether it's walking, going from fast to slow, cycling, swimming, you could have a lot more results than just doing one thing for a long time. And they had it down to 10 minutes of weight training along with 10 to 15 minutes of interval training, and the two of them together was the equivalent of at least an hour and a half of doing one or the other. So that was pretty smart thinking. And then comes this year, but a lot of that was corroborated again, redone, and we had some incredible research. Back in January, research was published that showed that you can divide up training times after meals. So a 10-minute walk after a meal 3 times a day is aerobically the equivalent of, yes, a 30-minute fast walk, but better yet, it helped regulate our sugar levels for 6 hours after a meal, which is phenomenal. If you are dealing with sugar issues, walking after a meal can do so much good, and the benefits are long-lasting. So again, smarter and easy to do, right? 10 minutes is a lot easier than a longer frame of time. Then what came up in July was the 5-minute workout. They did some burst training for just 5 minutes, where every minute for 20 seconds sprints were done. And in 5 minutes, we were able to see such incredible change metabolically that insulin resistance was incredibly diminished, and muscle building occurred, and that was so it was shown basically in 5 minutes you can do phenomenal work. It doesn't take much time. It's not how much time you spend, it's how smart you spend it. So that was that one. And they also found that it increased years significantly in an animal model. So it was very anti-aging. In August, we got research from Sweden that showed 3 20-second sprints a day. So we're talking 1 minute here, folks, 1 minute. 3 20-second sprints a day increased neuroplasticity, which is how our brain can adapt to stress, phenomenally. It decreased Alzheimer's risk very measurably by about 30%. Is there a drug out there that'll do that? We're talking 3 20-second sprints a day, 5 days a week. And it also improved how our DNA gets expressed. So it changed our genetic expression. So if we have some bad genes in that background, it changed how it plays out the story of our storybook of life. So pretty important research that was published then. And also in August, and this was more local, back to Ontario again, and I kind of get a kick out of this one. It showed that 10 minutes of intense training a day, doing interval training, on skin samples from the buttocks showed an incredible average of 18 years of reversal in skin aging. That's a lot. And that was after only 3 months. So the reason they chose this skin right here, because it's not as damaged by sun and therefore more accurate measurement. So that's what that one showed. And then back in September, another study showed the corroboration of not only change in genetic expression, but somehow, and we don't know how this happened, actual DNA change for the better. We are still trying to figure that out because it goes against the laws of physics as far as DNA goes, but we are able to demonstrate actual changes in DNA through exercise that is short and intense. Now, this does not take away the beauty of something slow, long, languid stroll. For example, who would argue against me that a nice stroll along the beach for 30 minutes is not good for you, not healing, right? Psychologically, you can ruminate through problems and solve them. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pure physical change here. So that's exercise. Let's switch gears and hit food just for a moment, because I want to reiterate some food rules as well. And I really, as you know, I'm from Europe originally, and I get to compare a lot Europe versus here. And we do so many things so much better. I want you to know that. But one thing we do not do better is food. And it's a major problem, and it is very, very unfortunate. And I feel very sorry for my patients, and I mean that. Because what happens is when you go to the grocery store or the gas station, school, everywhere you go, you are just hit by major marketing campaigns, subtle or obvious. It's in your face all the time, tempting you left and right with products that are just evil. They sabotage your health and really is the ruin of us as mankind in this country. And it seems like an extreme view, but it is not, because a lot of the foods that we accept as normal are not foods. They're basically 30 or 40-year-old experiments that have failed miserably. Look at us as a nation. It is not working. The food colors that are illegal in my home country are used freely through all boxed foods. The majority of Americans eat boxes of foods instead of real food. And the ingredients that are used, such as the artificial sweeteners, they are so evil for you neurologically, for you metabolically. The high fructose corn syrups, I'm not going to belabor that point, but wow, that has really been the downfall of us as a nation as well. And then we've gotten into some genetic modifications of certain foods. For example, soy. 92% of our soy is now genetically modified. It is 11 times as allergenic as regular real soy. And it has become illegal in Europe 1 year after introduction there because of the extreme side effects that they saw as far as seizure activity, as far as neurological consequences such as epileptic seizures, ADD, ADHD, hyperactivity kind of problems, all just from soy that we've modified. The evidence has been well proven. It is straight in our face and we do nothing about it. So, food in general, if it looks like how it grew, it's usually good for you. If it doesn't look like how it grew, it's probably bad for you. If it's in a box, be suspicious. If you see a lot of ingredients on the box, don't eat it. Eat mostly plants, lots of good fats. We are down as a nation as far as fats go. And make sure our proteins are really clean. The proteins out there have just become so dirty, it's hard to find clean. But if you have fish, make sure it's fresh. Wild caught, that's a big difference versus the farm-raised salmon, for instance. And if you can, organic. But even non-organic produce is so much better than boxed food. Yeah? A pesticide-laden piece of broccoli is going to outperform a Twinkie any day. So, watch what you put inside your body. It is your fuel. It changes your genetic expression. It alters how you look, feel, and act. And what you see out there is the product of what we do as a human being, what we put in our mouth. Bad fuel equals bad cells. Bad cells equals bad health. So you can see I'm not even talking about obesity here. I'm talking about health. Because when we get a patient in that is extremely obese, we don't even talk about weight loss to them. We tell them that if we change the way you eat, I can guarantee you in 6 weeks you're going to be feeling totally different. Your cholesterol will have dropped dramatically. Your blood pressure will have dropped. Your inflammatory markers will have dropped. You're going to be much, much healthier and happier at your 300 or 400 pounds that you are. Now, would it behoove them to lose that weight? Of course it would. And that is what we talk about when we get them healthier. Okay. So, we're doing something new now. Newsletter sign up. If you're not getting our newsletter, what we do is we describe new products in here. We describe what's going on, like influenza A. We describe what's going on. Facebook, we do the same thing. So keep up to speed with that. I think you'd like it a lot. A lot of very current critiques of what's out on the news, because news out there is weird. It's more. I don't know if you've seen it in the Grand Rapids Press just lately, all the immunization articles. That wasn't news, that was trying to mold opinions. So we try to counter that in our newsletters and try to help you understand other sides of the stories. Okay. So here you see the chart of how obesity is continuing to increase. There was a report last year that said it looks like we've stopped the obesity epidemic, but now the latest report shows no, we're just keep it right on going. That was a short blip. Don't know why that happened, but we are on our way to becoming more and more obese, and it's going to be hard to find somebody who's not obese in about 20 years if our current trends continue. And it seems like everybody is just running rampant trying to blame this one thing, this other thing. No, as we'll explore in a moment, it's many things. And that's where the functional medicine approach really comes in. How are your detoxification pathways working? How are your hormones? Your gut, so critical to overall health. How is that processing your food? For example, just a little tidbit on that. If you're over 50, your stomach acids are going to be down by 50% on average. Just by adding a digestive enzyme will help you lose 10 to 12 pounds of weight on average in a year without any other changes. See, so digestive system is so critical. The urinary tract system, part of our detoxification pathways. If that's not eliminating properly, we start storing things in fat that we shouldn't. This is how we excrete heavy metals, for instance. If heavy metals aren't being excreted, then where does it go? To our fat cells. The body doesn't want to lose weight at that point? No, because then where do those heavy metals have to go? So it's almost like a safety mechanism. Musculoskeletally, muscles is part of our metabolism. It's our furnace. And that's why we like our muscle mass to be high. It's not just looks or function only. It's part of metabolism. And it's one of the easier ways to increase metabolism. We'll talk about that. Your cardiovascular respiratory system, you'll notice that patients who are into heart failure are actually gaining weight. And there's several reasons for that. There's not enough oxygenation going on in the peripheral tissues, which really affects fat cells, which then become inflammatory, which then increases weight again. So your heart function is really critical here. Hormones, we're going to talk about that, but any woman in the room will tell you that if I'm off hormonally, I feel fat. I hear that one a lot, and that's because of fluid retention causing inflammation, which makes you increase your fat count as well. And moods, well, if your mood is off, guess what happens? We start snacking, don't we? It's our automatic go-to and is a big one. And so you can see I can go on and on how everything affects everything. And therefore, when a patient comes in with weight issues, we have to explore all those things. So the things that most affect weight: thyroid function. And this is not in order of commonality, okay? This is just, I just threw them up. Our adrenals, our stress hormones, estrogen levels, that's a big one, obviously with females, but we just recently discovered in males as well. Insulin, it's a huge one. Poor detoxification pathways. This one is so strong that 2 years ago when we did a topic on obesity, that's all I talked about was detoxification pathways. Stress, the food we put in our mouth, and the kind of exercise that we do. And I have to emphasize that because there's one discouraging piece of research that was published in November that showed that exercise can increase weight, can increase obesity. And people are going, whoa, what's going on with that? And we'll get into that. So for males in general, really what you have to look at is testosterone. Testosterone problems, epidemic. It is unbelievable. Today's 30-year-old is the equivalent of 2 generations ago what guys were at 75. Overall, our testosterone has decreased by 73%. It is a huge problem, folks. It is a huge problem. And testosterone is not just about sex drive, it is about energy, it's about muscle mass, it's about clarity of mind, moods, it's a lot of things. And if you don't have the testosterone, you will become obese. Now, why are men in such crisis? The pollutants that surround us is part of it. There's so many estrogenic factors out there, the plastics, I've even seen studies on how a lot of these estrogenic compounds from drugs, such as the birth control pill, find its way into our water system, and those minute amounts can affect a male quite dramatically. You say, well, that's ridiculous. No, it's not. If you study hormones, how little hormone can affect you, it is quite shocking. So even our water problem is becoming a male problem. So we have the problem with testosterone becoming inflammatory because our liver is no longer working like it should because of antibiotic use, medication use, and bad food choices. So testosterone is a biggie. Very fascinating study showed that on average, the average athlete that stays very athletic after their professional career by age 65 has lost only 1% of testosterone per decade. They are very close to testosterone to where they were in their peak. Whereas the average male, like I said, is down by 70 to 75%. So obviously exercise is pretty huge also maintaining testosterone levels. Cortisol becomes a really big problem in certain age groups, and cortisol is what we secrete when we're under stress, especially chronic stress. Our adrenals are designed to have bursts of stress. It actually likes it. It's like exercise for the adrenals. But chronic stress, that's just constant, like say a toxic relation stress, or I hate my job stress, or chronic sleep deprivation stress, increases cortisol levels, which then starts drowning out other hormones, such as testosterone, such as insulin, and causes great imbalance in those hormones, again increasing obesity. This is where the apple gut often becomes apparent, or the beer gut. That is cortisol, which has resulted in insulin resistance. Very, very inflammatory, increases cardiovascular incidence by 3-fold, and it increases autoimmune disease risk by about 2-fold, and it increases Alzheimer's risk. We don't know yet how much, but to the point that we now call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes because it's insulin dysregulation in the brain. We know what causes Alzheimer's. That's another topic, but it is an inflammatory response partially due to insulin resistance within the brain. Yes. And then, of course, insulin, huge problem. We now think that 55% of the American population has insulin issues. That's a lot. That is, it's mind-boggling when you think about it, because it was basically not existent just 2 generations ago. And here we are on our way to developing diabetes, obesity, inflammatory disorders, all because of our food intake. And part of that is plain old sugar, just too much sugar. About 140 pounds of sugar gets consumed per person in the United States today, whereas, say, in Abe Lincoln's time, it was 7 pounds. We've increased our sugar intake a little bit. How did that happen? Well, if you come and watch a movie Fed Up back in February, you'll understand some of it, but part of it is the fact that our wise government in the 1970s redid the food pyramid and took out fats. If you study our obesity rate, that's when it really started taking off. Because fats blunts sugar ups and down and is anti-inflammatory. We're talking good fats, of course, not Krispy Kreme donuts. Yeah? And what the food manufacturers discovered is without fat, our food just tastes horrible. So what they had to do to instead is increase sugar. And that's where our sugar just went to town. And of course, sugar is more addictive than cocaine. That's a very common, researched topic now. And it's just almost impossible to get off of sugar once you're on that bandwagon. And a lot of us, yeah, I'm low sugar, I'm low sugar. Yeah, really, but are you really low sugar? You may be only eating half of what your neighbor is, but that's still 70 pounds a year. And it might look good, but it's not good enough. So that's an important point. So the poor detoxification pathways is major due to our poor food choices, our pharmaceuticals that we've put into our body, the foods, the increased sugar, our poor livers and kidney function has just declined terribly. And a little known fact about the liver is that it's very important for sugar regulation. It is our backup system. We store glycogen within the liver. And when our sugar levels drop between meals, we're supposed to release that, reconvert that to sugar, and bingo, you've got this nice little flat line of sugar. If you have liver dysfunction, and about 1/3 of adults now have what we call fatty liver, which is chronic liver inflammation, it's the new normal. And just as a side note, I often see blood work coming back that the liver enzymes are elevated, AST and ALT and some others. And it's not even talked about in doctors' offices anymore because they see it so often. I'm going, hey, that's liver damage. This is highly abnormal. It is so common that doctors do not talk about it anymore. And that obviously results in very poor detoxification, poor sugar regulation, and is a major factor. And that's why when we have a patient that comes in for weight loss, often we start them with a detoxification program first. We don't even talk about weight loss. No, let's get you cleaned out, then we proceed. Lack of muscle is a biggie. It is one of the bigger ones out there because as we've become more and more sedentary as a society, because technology has allowed us to do that, wow, I could spend the whole topic just on that because muscle is part of our immune system, how we fight inflammation, part of our metabolisms, part of our sugar regulation, and without it, it's very, very much an uphill battle to maintain your weight, let alone lose. So, and we're going to go into more details about that, but we have to optimize the detoxification, get the gut healed, and balance the hormones. So, eating for your biochemistry is really important. And what did I mean with that? Your biochemistry is unique. You are different than your neighbor. You are different than your husband or wife. So we're going to go through checklists to figure out your biochemistry, but this is one important part of your biochemistry that often gets neglected. What is your descent? Is it European? Is it from Africa? Is it Asian? Because there's thousands and thousands of years of heritage there that your genes have adapted to and works well with. This little 50-year experience that we've done here has not worked well, right? And it's really good to recognize where you come from, study those foods, and your body will like that a lot. I've seen some very startling studies on this. For example, the Aborigines in Australia. They are in a health crisis just like our Native Americans. Average lifespan in the 40s, diabetes and alcoholism and suicide just rampant. It's really a mess, just like we have a mess here. And the Australians are really big in functional medicine. They are very progressive in their thinking. They like pushing the envelope of medicine to the next level. And they did this experiment where they studied which Aborigines still had the skills to live on their own. Fishing, hunting, hiking, you know, they could still do it. But all had some chronic illness, whether it's diabetes, an autoimmune disease, obesity, whatever it was. They had to have an illness that was diagnosable and documentable. And they finally found 67 that were willing to be dropped off in the interior of Australia. We're going to do this for 2 months. Drop you guys off, and gals, and we'll pick you up again. No radio contact, nothing. So, this experiment ended when they were picked up again, And wouldn't you know it, the cure rate for all those litany of diseases, and we're talking severe illnesses here, was over 95% in 2 months. All they did, lots of outside time, exercise, real food. That's all they did. It spoke to their genes in a way that it hadn't been spoken to in generations. And the body totally reversed a lot of their illnesses. Very classic study. It was very startling, and it was at first accused of cheating and, you know, this is not right and that. No, but it has been documented and is now considered a repeatable study. Amazing what the body can do in very little time when you give it the right chance. So eat for your biochemistry. A big one here at DBC is also avoid food allergens and sensitivities. As we have westernized our gut and changed the digestive enzymes and have changed the bacteria that resides therein, and it has become more and more toxic and inflamed and compromised, we've become more and more allergic to foods. And the reasons for that are many, but the biggest ones that causes an inflammatory response and thus slows down metabolism and yes, can increase our weight dramatically. Gluten, unfortunately. Unfortunately, a lot of us have become incapable of also digesting dairy products unless it's in fermented form, especially older folks. Sugar, obviously. And yes, corn has become an allergen. For some of us, soy also, especially when it's genetically modified. And then you get the weird ones. Some of them we have to do blood work on. And I had one come back today, it was mushrooms. Where did that come from? Right? Mushrooms was very sensitive. And this person, oh, and eggs. And so we are taking that one out, and I expect to be able to reintroduce it in 3 months, hopefully. But that definitely explains some things going on with this patient. So exercising for your biochemistry is also absolutely critical. So if you have a high stress job, your biochemistry is high cortisol, let's not go training for a marathon or triathlon. That's just going to add stress to an already stressed individual, and it will make you fat. It will make you ill. It will burn you out. You will have injuries because your body is already under stress. Why add another stress to it? This is where the beauty of a short burst interval training is going to be much better because it's less stress on the body, less stress on the adrenals, and the body's going to actually respond to that. It will not be destructive exercise, but constructive exercise. You cannot escape stress. It's going to be there. But what we do with the stress, we can change, right? So optimizing how we process stress, and maybe at times even make it a good thing. A little bit like exercise. Look at stress not always as evil, but as builders. Unless we perceive it to be destructive, we do things that are wrong with it. And sometimes, yes, it is just too much. Right? If you're a graduate student and your finals, not a whole lot you can do. Although you do have some control over how you respond to it, but it's still too much. Sleep, phenomenally important. We are obviously a sleep-deprived nation. We can probably improve our obesity numbers by at least 25% just with sleeping better. Yeah, affects our hormones so much. Some of the general nutraceuticals that we use, and we call these nutraceuticals because these have been clinically tried, verified third party for quality to make sure that it works like it's supposed to. And these things are really cutting edge. One of them is Testotonic for men, which gives you the building blocks to help promote good testosterone instead of bad testosterone. Men that take that notice increased energy, a little bit better overall drive to get things done, increased muscle mass. Love that product. And Vitality Support does similar things. Some of these items are found in Wellness Essentials for Men form of it. Wellness Essentials for Men is the best packet that I've been able to come up with for overall men's health. It promotes prostate health. It is very anti-inflammatory. Some of the ingredients in there, such as magnesium and fish oil, can reduce heart attack and stroke risk by up to 55%. For females, calcium obviously becomes a bigger topic, and the very thing that has been proven to be best for females over 30 is Cal Appetit. Cal Appetit is the only one that the court of law has allowed us to claim that it actually reverses bone loss instead of helping maintain or slow down. And chasteberry is one of the things that we utilize to balance estrogen and progesterone ratio. Very time-honored, but now as well clinically proven. Estrium is for those that are going through the change or have severe estrogen problems, or even things like breast cancer. We like putting patients on estrium because it gets rid of the evil components of estrogen and promotes the good estrogen. It also builds muscle, and so does indole 3-carbinol, a broccoli extract that promotes the good detoxification pathways for estrogen. Very often, especially as we age, but lately more and more young people, because of excessive use of antibiotics, we promote good probiotics. Probiotics have become very controversial. However, research is exploding. Currently, there's over 200 clinical trials ongoing in the United States alone on probiotics. It is phenomenal what they're finding, especially in hospital settings, in preventing complications from surgery to what happens when they do intubation, to just overall health with the patient. So the ones we use are used in research. It's called the NCFM strain, and the only ones that we have actually proven to actually work. The others are dicey. Fish oil, that's called Mega 10. This is from the Cleveland Heart Clinic, and this is so anti-inflammatory that it opens up arteries within 6 months and lowers insulin resistance by about 40% in 3 months. This fish oil is quite a special one, and just had one of my patients say, hey, I feel great ever since I was put on this one, and I know how that works because his overall inflammation is down because of it. Ultrameal 360 is the power hitter of the night, and Ultrameal 360 has been published in 7 different medical journals in the last 5 years, and this is the one that is a multitasker because it lowers insulin like nothing else we have ever seen. And because it lowers insulin so much, it lowers weight, it lowers cholesterol, it lowers blood pressure, it lowers overall neurological damage due to sugar fluctuations, it improves overall sugar regulation through the day, so it helps improve energy. So it's obviously a multitasker. You affect one thing positively, you're going to have a multiple effect down the line. So let's get nitty-gritty here for a moment. Men, a unique breed indeed. The teens through 30 are going to be different than those over 50, obviously. And what we are finding here at DBC is that a remarkable amount of them are insulin resistant. And part of that is that the average teenager now consumes 4 to 5 pops a day. It is shocking. We're predicting that we'll have an osteoporosis epidemic in these males by age 35. It reduces bone density dramatically. But not only that, this is why more than 50% of them are pre-diabetic. Affects their brain. If you notice how many of them need Ritalin, Adderall, this is part of that, because the brain is so dependent on sugar. It consumes 20% of our sugar, and we have a whole dietary program that we teach here with health coaching called Nourish, that basically what we're doing is we're getting rid of the sugar fluctuations, increasing fat so that the brain can function. Yeah? So we have to treat that in these teenagers. And we increase the regulation with that Ultrameal Plus 360 and Vega Sport protein. It's the best plant-based protein out there. Remember, proteins are often dirty, so we like to use organic plants to make it, but the problem with plant proteins is that it's an incomplete protein, hard to digest at times, and doesn't build muscle like some other proteins out there. So there's been some pretty smart researchers out there that said, well, if I combine this plant protein with this plant protein with that plant protein, now we've got a perfect protein, even better than eggs, more bioavailable, and you can absorb up to 35 grams of protein per sitting, which is pretty huge, because most of the people that consume these protein powders, one, use whey protein powder, which can be very inflammatory and affects insulin resistance in a negative way. So you heard that right, the whey protein can affect insulin resistance in a negative way. But not only that, you cannot absorb more than 18 grams of protein at a time when you do that. You can double that with a plant-based protein. So it's more effective at building muscle. And that's why Vega Sport protein is used with weightlifting. to more effectively build muscle. When we're into 30 to 50-year-old, we're still insulin resistant. That didn't just magically go away. But now we've got this stressed husband who's forced to drive his minivan instead of his Corvette, with 5 hollering kids in the back, working 60 hours a week to make it happen, and has become very cortisol dominant and is probably not getting enough sleep. Big gut right over here, very classic, decreasing muscle mass, and they've, because of poor food choices where they just eat on the run and barely take the time to do things that are right for themselves, they become very toxic. We start them on a 10-day detox, or what we call the DBC detoxification program, which is 4 weeks, depending on the severity. And then we switch them to Ultrameal 360, and I force feed them phytoganics, which, one little scoop, is organic vegetables and berries that are detoxifying about 8 pounds worth in one little scoop. And I have them throw it through anything that they can, so that I know they're at least getting some vegetables. Yeah, I know it's a very difficult population for me to deal with. I try to cajole them, I try to threaten them, I do this and that. These 30 through 50-year-olds are not an easy crowd. They really aren't. So I try to make it easy for them. So kind of a no-fail thing. We do weightlifting because their muscle mass is declining, and luckily for males, because they have the testosterone levels, muscles can come back very quickly. And when it does, they feel so much better so quickly, and their testosterone levels start regulating, their sugar starts regulating, anti-inflammatory, their joints feel better, and most importantly of all, their brain feels more energetic, which gives them more willpower. And so weightlifting does phenomenal things for males. And every male in this room should be doing this. If you are not, I'll do something. But interval walking is also recommended because we're stressed, we're cortisol dominant, we're sleep deprived. You cannot go on these 50-mile bike rides or train for a triathlon unless you have this beautiful life that does have no stress. It just isn't healthy at that point for most men. So I'm recommending walks with sprints through it, and it can be as little as 10 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week, right? And if you're doing it, 30-second sprint, 3, 4, 5 times during 10 or 15 minutes is all it takes. If you can't do it, faster walking and then slower walking is a good way to start. Or maybe one little sprint for starters. Right? We all have to start somewhere. If you're over 50, now we're talking digestive concerns, because at 50 we're at 50% loss of digestive enzymes compared to when we're 20. We're no longer able to break down proteins as well. Our carbohydrates start fermenting, which creates byproducts that are toxic, and we're still insulin resistant. So what we do is we stick to the Ultrameal 360, add stomach acids. That alone, like I said earlier, it increases weight loss quite considerably, and a probiotic, because at this age almost all males do have some bacterial overgrowth that's undesirable in the gut, which alters the way we digest. We ferment our foods instead of digest our foods, and that's toxic and causes inflammation. And as you know, the gut affects everything, from moods to how we produce energy to how we build muscle. In fact, when we detoxify a male over 50, oftentimes we increase muscle mass by 2% in just 2 weeks, just by detoxification. It is absolutely amazing what happens physiologically when we do this. Again, we're doing weightlifting and interval walking. If they're leaving the charmed life that they're already on the way to retirement, very few of them are, then of course you can start doing more of that more of the longer distance things. I was just talking to a 59-year-old who's getting back into running and was boasting that he had run 22K this weekend without a problem, and that was marvelous because he's exiting out of his business and is only working half-time at this point, right? So that works. For most of us, it doesn't. Females. The female patient that's young, here we were talking about the startup of hormones, and is an absolute critical part of life, because this can determine how hormones are the entire rest of life. We're setting the template hormonally. And if we have insulin in the way, because remember, insulin is a hormone, and can really create havoc with our other hormones because they're all neighbors and they all talk to each other, we've got a major problem. I'd be willing to vouch that if I got rid, and us doctors got rid of insulin resistance in a teenage female, more than half of hormonal problems would go away. We're talking acne, PMS, cramping, dysmenorrhea in general, all those problems. The infertility rate in slightly older, so we're talking up to in the 20s, when we're supposed to be in our peak fertility-wise, has been decreased dramatically due to insulin resistance, creating polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, becoming very, very common. This is keeping the fertility experts very busy, and we've gotten better and better at that. But how about examining what's really going on here? Insulin resistance is a big one hormonally. And it's causing estrogen and progesterone complications. So if there's PMS, cramping, oftentimes it is estrogen and progesterone imbalance, where the one is not balancing out the other at the right time. And what we do is we suggest chasteberry for those patients, which is an absolutely magical formula that can bring progesterone back up to balance excessive estrogen. And we try to get rid of the insulin resistance and add meta-I3C, which stands for indole 3-carbinol. Again, it's that abstracted broccoli that gets rid of inflammatory estrogen. When we have too much of that inflammatory estrogen and we can't eliminate it, it has to go somewhere. And it gets stored in fat. This is why oftentimes when we hear, I got put on a birth control pill, all of a sudden I started gaining weight. I mean, who has not heard that one? It's because that synthetic estrogen has to go somewhere. And body can't eliminate it, so the next best thing is fat cells. Let's stuff it in there. And when you try to lose that, body goes, no, I don't want to. I don't want to release that bad estrogen. I'm going to hold this right here. And it's amazing how few calories the patient has to go on, how increase their exercise before it even starts budging. This is why we often start them on a form of detoxification as well. Weightlifting and aerobic exercise is recommended. We're careful with aerobic exercise when we have hormonal difficulties, because that can add to the hormone difficulties. Again, interval training is a much safer way than the long distance stuff. When we're 30 to 50, wow, are we seeing adrenal fatigue here? And it is just amazing. And I think us doctors are somewhat frustrated by this. In a weird way, sexism is very much alive in our country, and the females is expected to still do everything. And I don't know. That's a whole other topic. I'm not going to go there. But the thick and thin of it is that the 30 to 50-year-old female is dramatically overburdened by multiple responsibilities, which is that chronic stress that causes adrenal fatigue. And adrenals is also a sugar regulator. It affects how we metabolize sugar. Yeah? These are the folks that wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Very common. These are the ones that wake up and they're really tired and they don't start feeling better till it gets closer to bedtime. These are the folks whose moods are going up and down. Lots of PMS, changing periods. I thought it was supposed to be getting better when I was getting older. It's not happening. Adrenal fatigue. And don't forget, everything works together. That's what makes this kind of medicine so beautiful, because the adrenals talks to the thyroid, right? They're really one unit, and then thyroid becomes a problem. And thyroid issues are so much more common in females than it is with males. And so underdiagnosed. So underdiagnosed. A patient in the Netherlands was complaining of severe constipation, somewhat dry skin, weight gain in spite of training for marathons. Yeah, here's that weight gain with exercise. And really eating quite well. And I requested some labs and they gave me the basic thyroid screen. Nothing showed. Thought, there's got to be something. So we went a little deeper and we went into more in-depth labs. Boom, there it was. Not converting active to inactive or inactive to active thyroid. It was not happening. So we put this patient on iodine and a little bit thyroid support. Okay, it's called T100, just a little bit. So Just heard back last week, constipation's gone, energy's way up, sleeping better, and doc, I've lost 20 pounds. 2 months. Age of the patient, 31. Yeah? Very, very common. Just plug it into it. Totally had escaped detection because only the thyroid screen was done, and this one doctor was looking at the labs and not at the patient. Yeah. So, often use Chaseberry Plus, some iodine, and Thyroxol. The iodine has to be, there's a few doctors that really like iodine, so they think, well, a little bit is good, more is better. No. Look at it as priming of an engine. This is a guy example. It's when the engine doesn't want to start, you give it just a little squirt of gas. It's called priming, and there it catches, right? And then it just runs. And the thyroid is a little bit like that. Sometimes you just got to give it just a little bit of that fuel, and boom, it takes off. If you over support it, then you make it lazy and you have other effects that are not good. So we don't like going high dose with iodine, but a little bit, but it can be absolutely golden. Yeah. So we have to maintain weightlifting, we have to maintain muscle mass, because with increased stress, that's very destructive for muscle mass. Very often we see these patients thin but fat. Okay, so they're a bit overstressed, they don't have muscle mass, they have too high a fat, and really their overall weight is perfect, but too much of it is fat. Does that make sense? So weightlifting is critical for them, and luckily you can do a lot in just 10 minutes. And I recommend relaxing kind of exercise like yoga. Okay? These are not the ones that respond well to intense exercise. You want to really keep it relaxing. A meditative kind of walk, that type of thing. Over 50, this is kind of the opposite of where the periods start, isn't it? It's actually going down the other way, and thyroid fatigue is becoming rampant here. We think 55+% of women over 50 have undiagnosed thyroid problems. That is the majority of women, undiagnosed. So that's not even counting the ones that are diagnosed. And that's because the right lab tests are not being run, or maybe we don't even have the right lab tests yet, because right now there's about, well, I've seen estimates, and they're really just estimates, but we think we can only diagnose 5 to 10% of conditions through blood work at this point. So blood gets treated as a holy anointed oil out there, but it's not, folks. It's only a component of our bodies. And it's very useful, there's no question about it, but it's only part of our bodies. So sleep complications, this is where sleep issues become rampant. From not able to fall asleep to not being able to stay asleep. And the digestive issues due to lack of digestive enzymes, and oftentimes yeast overgrowth, more of a problem with females than it is with males, becomes an issue. So we suggest estrogen, which is a protein powder to get rid of excess estrogen, to build muscle, and Adrenal-5, which supports the whole thyroid adrenal system. So Benasom is what we use for sleep, and Metagas is our digestive enzyme again. Again, weightlifting and yoga. So let's start summing up just a few of those things, because by now you got the glazed eye look, and yes, it is a little warm in here. And your game plan is threefold, and I'd like to recap it. 1, what are you going to eat? Plants or Twinkies? Plants are cheap. Yeah. They are absolutely delicious if you know what to do with them. It is fast. I love plants. It makes you feel good, and I want you to get hooked. I want you to get addicted on it. We're going to be starting to post on Facebook a daily picture and description of what I'm eating. And I want you to mimic it. It's not difficult. Like this morning's breakfast was a smoothie. I like doing smoothies because I can dole it out to the family. And what we did is took hemp milk because it's loaded with protein and good fats, but you can do water. I dumped a lot of wild mountain blueberries in there, the highest antioxidant value fruit out there, except for sea buckthorn berry, which is a weird berry from Tibet. And on top of that, I dumped in a ton of oil, because I wanted it to be high fat, and I wanted to blunt the sugar thing, right? It could be coconut oil or avocado oil, olive oil, whatever you choose to do. And also threw in just a few strawberries for taste, because I do have to sell it to my family. And power greens, deep greens. Okay, these are just organic, comes in bags, available almost everywhere. Pre-washed, pre-chopped, so it was no work. Kale, spinach, that type of thing. Threw a couple of handfuls of that in there. Dumped a protein powder called Vega Sport in there. 60 seconds since blended. Bzz, whole thing full. Everybody gets a cup. That is an awesome breakfast. Add some tea to it, your vitamins, you're out the door, minimum time spent, no dishes. Yeah? Post that on Facebook. It really doesn't have to be complicated. We had a curry last night that our staff also enjoyed today. We're going to be posting that on Facebook as well. Almost all vegetables, and along with some tofu mixed through there for protein. Great for leftovers. Just make a huge pan, and here you go, throw half of it in the freezer. Really easy. Lunch, why not make it a quick salad? Yeah? Grab a few handfuls of salad, and then take last night's leftover protein, whatever you made. Let's say you made some salmon. You grilled some salmon. Just take that. We always make double protein when we can, because we know at lunch you want to be able to balance whatever plant you're eating with it. Boom, 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 boom. 10 minutes, and you've got a fabulous gourmet meal. And no dairy was in any of these meals. No gluten. And honestly, folks, I didn't really suffer. You're fueling your body instead of just giving it calories. And fueling your body. Life is so much more fun. You have energy, clarity of thinking. You're much happier. When you get out of bed, instead of just, no, you just jump out of bed, you feel nothing. There's no pain, no joint dysfunction, right? You're not inflamed. It's a big deal. No, we cannot prevent aging, but we can certainly help you age well. Okay, so your exercise plan. Folks, you've got to be so realistic here, because I've yet to meet the patient who says, Doc, I got too much time to design me an exercise plan. It's not out there. What you want to do is design something that you know you cannot fail at. And if it's 5 minutes a day, then it's 5 minutes a day. And if it's first thing in the morning so nothing gets in the way of it, then that's what you do. And whatever else you do is just icing on the cake. Ooh, bad pun on that one. But you know what I mean, right? You know what I mean. So you want to really, I prefer doing a 10 to 15 minute exercise plan first thing in the morning before anything has gotten in the way. At least if my whole day falls apart, and believe me, that happens, I've got that in. Does that make sense? And then at night, if I have time and I feel like going for a long walk, great. Again, that's just a bonus, that's additional. It's maybe good mental defragging. And you've got to do what you have to do. That works for your life. Even if you're totally sleep deprived, that 10 minutes of exercise will give you more energy and will make you require less sleep the next night. Okay? My exercise plan allows me to require a lot less sleep and be able to go full throttle till I go to bed instead of crashing. I look at as that little bit of time spent as gaining hours and hours every day. So, important one. Yeah? I'd like you to not fail. So commit. You need to do 10 minutes 5 times a week. If you do more, great. Do not set unrealistic expectations. This is the most common failure I've seen here at DBC, and that's why I'm emphasizing it so much. Really, really important. And your sleep plan. Those late night TV shows, can them. Not worth it. The stuff you put in your brain right before you go to sleep affects your sleep the whole night. No flickering screen, no movie screen, no computer screen the hour before you go to bed. Go to our website, hit blogs, and find our blog on sleep. And you'll see your go-to plan on how to sleep better. Absolutely critical. In the winter, we need a half hour to 45 minutes more per night than we do in the summer. You have to follow the night versus day cycle because the hours before 2 do count double, just like you've heard. That is an established fact. 7 or 8 hours anywhere, no. It's got to be go to bed reasonably early, get up reasonably early, follow the sun. And we're biologically meant to do that. Hormonally, it works better. If you do it any other way, it causes clashing of hormones. And this is why night shift workers are not nearly as healthy and live a lot shorter lives because they're clashing their hormones. Yeah? So sleep plan is an important one. For those of you that have issues with food, there's something relatively new. It's called Artisan Bistro. And this is what I often have for lunch also. So you'll see this on Facebook, a picture of a very pretty looking meal. And yes, I was cheating because this is one of the few meals that is in the box that I like. And it's made according to our detox protocol. It's gluten-free for the most part, dairy-free. The salmon, the fish that's in there is wild caught. If there's chicken, it's all organic. And we feel that it's absolutely delicious. We have samples of boxes up front, I believe, along with coupons on how to do it. They are on sale now. So for between $7 and $8 per meal, you're getting a gourmet meal that is perfectly balanced with fats, proteins, and carbs. I've not seen a better deal anywhere. The shipping is free. It comes in freezer boxes, so it's frozen. And it is our go-to. If you look at our freezer in a Boer household, you open it, half of it is just those boxes because, yeah, we have kids floating in and out, and sometimes they need something, and of course you can't be cooking all day long. You know how that goes, and we don't always have leftovers. Boom, grab one, and there it is. So, love that one. It's put together by organic farms, and I can't say enough about that one. Artisan Bistro.
They have expanded their selection, so now they offer dairy-free, gluten-free, soy-free, and nut-free.
Yep. And you don't even know that you're eating that way.
Right.
It's a perfect gourmet meal.
And you can check those off, and then you can see what entrees still apply.
Yes. Yeah. Very allergy-free.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. Love that one. So, and that fits in our weight loss programs, by the way. Dawn is going to talk about that soon, it fits right in. So we tried to give you the whole picture. It's about becoming healthy, addressing your hormonal issues, addressing what's right for you age-wise. Make sure your detoxification system is up and running. Make sure that you're taking digestive enzymes if that's appropriate. Everybody should be on a probiotic if they're trying to lose weight. Ultrameal 360 is king here in North America due to our insulin resistance. Decrease the manufactured foods. Increase real foods, especially plants, and go high in fat. We've been so programmed the last 30 years to be low fat, low fat, low fat, and it is so wrong, so wrong, so wrong. We thrive on a higher fat, good protein, lower refined carb program. And folks, this is not a diet. This is how we should be eating always. If there's one thing that causes this shiver inside of me is the word diet. Because it implies something temporary, and it's not. I want to keep fueling super fuels into this body so we can have super performance. To do that takes just a little bit of smarts and steering around all those reefs that are threatening to just damage our lives. Unfortunately, it is that way. I always imagine when I go to a grocery store, avoid, I'm staying out of those inside aisles. I'm sticking to the produce on the outside. Those inside aisles of doom and evil, I'm not going there. It's just nothing but canned and boxed stuff. Yeah? So it takes a little bit of deliberation, but once you've stocked your pantry and your freezer and your fridge with the good stuff, it becomes easy because you can just go grab, 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 grab. It takes no imagination. I know I'm very guilty of always oversimplifying. Everybody tells me that. But in my world, yes, but in my world, it is simple. And I want to always keep saying that because once you're there, it is not much work. I want you to see the other side. To get there, and Don will definitely tell me that, wow, that's difficult at times because we are so hooked into food, our whole life can revolve around it, and we have to change our life. I get that. But again, once you're there, it's this thing that you don't want to stop. In fact, it takes willpower to eat bad because you know how it's going to make you feel. It takes willpower to eat bad. And that's the place I want you to ultimately arrive at some point. It is a journey. All right. So your resources, Facebook, right? We're going to be publishing our foods. Your Nature's Remedies newsletter, where we keep up on the trends and help you translate news. YouTube videos, like this presentation, is going to be available on YouTube starting in a couple weeks, and is available for download. You go to our website, hit the YouTube button, and it'll automatically download. We also have individualized health coaching. We're very proud of this aspect of DBC because it is a support system that allows us to teach our patients food that is right for them. And Don, would you like to talk about that? So Don is our star for health coaching. And I had it several times this afternoon. Well, how do I do this? How do I do that? It says, well, I'll just contact Don. And so here we go.
So I hope you're feeling very motivated to think about changing your relationship with food. It's a new year. It's a time when people are ready and eager to make those changes. So I hope after tonight you have some really good food for thought and some things to think about. And I'd always love for you to come and visit me. It's a great time to get together. It's helpful just to sit down with someone and kind of think through, what are the challenges that you face? Why am I struggling to do this with food? Or why am I struggling with my sleep? Am I getting enough hydration? How do I do that exercise? Dr. Denboer is up here saying, you just do 10 minutes a day. Well, I can't find 10 minutes a day. I can help you with that. I like to get into that nitty-gritty and that practical end of it, really focusing on you as an individual and how I can best help you meet your health goals. A couple of ways that we can do that are through some of the programs that we have. Dr. Denboer talked about how sometimes we need to start out with that detox to clean out the liver so we can get working on that weight loss. So that is one thing that we do. We have a 10-day detox program. We also have a 28-day detox program. The boot camp, the first line therapy, and the Nourish, those are all really geared at insulin resistance, cholesterol management, really learning how to utilize that food as medicine. Each takes a little bit of a different approach. First line therapy is a little more for those who need to wade in the shallow end. Boot camp is for if you're ready to really jump into the deep end. These two programs both involve 5 visits with me, so we really get to know each other well, get to know what your challenges are, and really get you going on a path to lifelong weight management. Nourish is a new program that we have, also geared at blood sugar management, specifically related to neurological things for the most part. This one involves 2 visits with me, and really seeing some great, exciting results from this as well. One of the other things that we do are periodic cooking classes through the year, so just be watching, just like the women's night out and the movie night, cooking classes will pop up here and there, and that's just a really great time too to learn more about how to utilize food as medicine.
Great. And then on top of that, the BIA, I have not talked about it tonight yet, but this is a real motivator, bioimpedance analysis. It really accurately measures your muscle mass, your body fat. It measures your metabolic rate, so how well your thyroid and adrenals running. It measures inflammatory markers, energy production within cells. So it can really measure your progress and how you're doing on all these things. So, and that's an easy test to do. I highly recommend that my patients do that first thing. So as far as your plan for the year, start at the very least with a BIA. If you already have figured out, okay, I'm going to need help, I failed many times, then talk to Don. Okay, because we can guide you along the way and get that practical aspect. Because I'm a bit of an idealist, and someone has to be. To me, it's like, just do it. But no, when it comes right down to it, there's some problems in the way, and we can problem solve through that. And that's where Don kicks in with her wonderful support through phone calls, emails, and personal meetings. We have a wonderful tracking system, not only with the BIA, but through checking cholesterol, things like blood pressure, your sugar levels, all those things that can be measured in this office. So it's something that, depending on where you're at, just jump in, do it. But you have to tonight, what is my exercise plan? What is my sleeping plan? And what does my meal plan look like? And at least start it, because you know that's the biggest step. Because 3-4 days from now, this will have faded. You've got to do that. And next time I see you, I will ask you about it. What is your exercise plan? What is your meal plan? How well are you sleeping? And we'll take it from there. Good luck.